evolution, interestingly, there are so many metaphysical things at play. From the point of view, there are a lot of philosophical assumptions and presuppositions that you cannot prove that are required in order for evolution to be true. Because when scientists talk about truth, they never talk about truth with a capital T. They talk about truth with a small t in its italics, because they know the Darwinian mechanism or evolution, for example, is fundamentally based on the inductive inference, which means that there can be another observation in the future that can contradict our current conclusions. Even the evangelical great fiction writer Richard Dawkins, he says in his book A Devil's Chaplain that we may have evidence in the future that would change Darwinism, or we will reject it altogether. The reason he's saying this, because he has to be close to his academia, to the academic world, because we know that there can be another observation that fundamentally contradicts our previous conclusions. That's the first point. And that is a philosophical point, yeah? The second point is, in the philosophy of biology, you could refer to Professor Michael Rules, Professor Elliot Sober, and others. You would see that there are philosophical assumptions that science cannot prove, but are required in order for evolution to be true with a small t. One of those philosophical assumptions is called gradualism. Another philosophical assumption within the scientific paradigm is what you would call that nature is uniform. You have to have that assumption in order for you to even say evolution is true. Let me explain why. Scientists have to agree that, or hold the presupposition that they can't prove that nature is uniform, because if they didn't hold it, then they can't say that well-confirmed scientific theories can be applied to all phenomena. Because the Darwinian mechanism of evolution as we know it today, yes, it's well-confirmed according to scientists, yes, it has predictive power, but the problem is it hasn't seen all the evidence. For example, we haven't seen all of biological change. We have only seen, what, 5% of the ocean? But because it's got predictive power, it's well confirmed, and because of the philosophical unproven assumption that nature is uniform, then they can say that now evolution or Darwinian mechanism explains all of biological phenomena. I know that took time to unpack, but do you appreciate from what I've just said that even when you're saying some things are true or a fact, they're actually based on assumptions that you can't even prove?
Not totally. I think there's some things that we can prove, that we can observe, and those are the things that I'm saying I believe are true.
Yes.
You know, and there's a difference between that and a theory. And theories, I agree, we may later discover something that contradicts, maybe.
Okay, let me just to interject, sorry, because I think you're misusing the word theory in a scientific sense here. Theory in a popular sense, yes, it's just someone's theory. It's just your idea of how to explain certain things. Theory in actually science is one of the highest epistemic value, meaning the value of truth is extremely high. Why? Because it's well confirmed empirically and it has predictive power. So when you say, I believe evolution is a fact, you're actually saying evolution as a scientific theory, which has a higher epistemic value, is a fact. Yeah. But the reason I wanted to use that to explore that even when you say something is a fact in a scientific sense, or something is known to be true in a scientific sense, it has other philosophical assumptions that it requires in order for it to make sense scientifically. And those philosophical assumptions cannot be proven. So the reason I wanted to say this to you is to show that even when you're saying something is a fact, it actually based on assumptions that you can't prove. So how do we now square the circle here? Well, the reason I wanted to bring this to you to just kind of enlighten you, because you were saying that there are some things that we cannot know. But when you apply that to and therefore I don't believe it to be true. But when you apply that same reasoning to something that you call a fact, in order for you to be consistent, you have to reject the well-confirmed scientific theory called the Darwinian mechanism. And I'm not suggesting you should do that. But what I'm suggesting here is to try and explore the way you're reasoning here. So let's go back to the metaphysics. There are some first principles that we can know to be true. Can we know them empirically? No. But there are some truths that you can't prove empirically. And that is something that you need to explore, because the minute you stand in the possibility there are truths that you can't prove empirically is the minute that when you start talking about contingency of God's existence, that becomes more plausible for you. And this is very important for you to highlight, because even in science, the things that you said are true, like evolution, for example, they require truths that cannot be proven empirically. For example, for science to work, you need to believe in causal relations. Causal relations cannot be seen. Yes, you see a cause and you see effect, but the causal relation, you cannot see it. And that is a metaphysical discussion to be had. It's a non-empirical discussion, and scientists accept a particular view of that to be true in order for science to make sense. Now, I've said all of this only for you to continue your intellectual journey so you can unpack further ideas, because the way you've approached this topic required that unpacking. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry for going too long.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, the way I understand a theory, or when I talk about a scientific theory, is that it's an explanation of the facts. Is that what you understand? Or are we not talking past each other here?
No, yeah, I agree. But the facts require explanation. That's the point. So when someone says evolution is a fact, in the sense that you're referring to, all you're saying is there's biological change. But what evolution is, in terms of the way we try and explain the fact, is in terms of the Darwinian mechanism, is that it explains biological change. No one disagrees with biological change. It's just the explanation of biological change that is what we call the evolution theory, or the well-confirmed theory that's called evolution.
Right. So there's parts of evolution that you can accept as a Muslim, but parts that you can't. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's a different topic, but just to quickly answer that, there are some observable facts, the observable facts that we accept. We accept the fact that there's biological change. No one disagrees with that. The disagreement—
And what about natural selection?
Well, even that's not hugely contentious. What we would say is—
Right. Sorry to interrupt you. That's how, when I talk about evolution is true, that's all I'm saying. So change by mutation and natural selection working together to create what we see today in terms of our diversity.
Which all requires the philosophical assumptions that I discussed with you. That's the point.
But I do agree with you that perhaps there are further truths or more accurate explanations of what we see in terms of life and diversity. But what I believe, or what I accept in science, is that the observable parts of evolution that we see, the mutation, the natural selection, those parts for me are true. And any explanation that we find in the future, or that is out there to be found, will only add to that rather than contradict.
Okay,
that's the position I'm taking.
Yeah, I'm going to let other people get involved to make it more productive. But just want to say something. The minute you put in mutation in there, the minute you put natural selection in there, you're really now talking about an explanation for biological change. The minute you start having those explanations, all of the philosophical presuppositions that you cannot prove in that sense are required. Yeah, they're required. So, because if you're saying what explains all of biological change is X, Y, and Z, well, then you got the presupposition of nature's uniform. You also got the presupposition of all the other stuff, the basic understanding of causal relations. You still require non-empirical metaphysical truths, if you want to call them that, or assumptions that you can't prove empirically in order for what you believe to be true to be true. Once you understand that properly, then when you talk about what we can know metaphysically and physically and all of the stuff that you mentioned in the beginning, you'll be able to unpack that in a more productive way. That's all I wanted to say, because when we do convey and we teach the philosophy of science, you know, one of my specialist modules in my postgrad was philosophy of science. When you teach that to people, especially to atheists, agnostics, it really opens their mind. And they start to understand, you know what, there are truths out there that are non-empirical, that we can investigate. And we can't just say we don't know. Because if we apply that same logic to the things that we believe to be true in science, then we'll have to reject most of the science. That was the point I'm trying to